They had been watching the human colony for 3 years. Their observation drones floated high above the clouds of 442b, recording everything. They watched the humans plant crops. They watched them build homes from local stone and imported metal. They watched children play in the red dust of an alien world while their parents worked under a sun that was not their own. Commander stood on the bridge of his survey vessel and studied the data on his display screen. The colony was called New Eden. It held fewer than 800 humans. They had basic defensive weapons, nothing that could threaten a warship. They had no military vessels in orbit. They had no allies within rescue distance. They looked like easy prey. The Dominion had conquered 47 species across the galaxy. Their method was simple and effective. They found isolated settlements, took hostages of value, and demanded surrender. Most species gave up without a fight. Those who resisted were crushed so completely that others learned from their example. Had performed this operation many times. He expected no difficulties with the humans. His species knew little about humanity. The humans had only recently emerged onto the galactic stage. They had faster-than-light travel for barely a century. Their home planet was far away in a quiet arm of the galaxy. The database listed them as a young species, still primitive by galactic standards, still learning their place in the cosmic order. The database also noted that humans had a strong attachment to their offspring. This was useful information. It meant that taking a child would guarantee cooperation from the adults. Selected his target with care. He wanted someone connected to the colony leadership, someone whose absence would cause immediate concern, someone small enough to be easily controlled. He found exactly what he was looking for in the colony's population records, a 7-year-old female named Lily Carter. Her father, Daniel Carter, served as the agricultural director. Her mother, Susan Carter, managed the colony's food distribution systems. Both parents held positions of importance. Both would do anything to protect their daughter. Approved the operation and scheduled the raid for dawn. Far below, on the surface of 442b, the colonists of New Eden had no idea what was coming. They went about their evening routines. They ate dinner with their families. They put their children to bed and talked about tomorrow's work. The twin moons rose over the settlement, casting silver light across the fields of modified wheat and engineered vegetables that kept the colony fed. Lily Carter slept in her small room at the back of her family's home. She dreamed of the butterflies she had seen in the greenhouse that day. They were not real butterflies from Earth, but genetic recreations designed to pollinate the colony's crops. To Lily, they were magical creatures with wings like stained glass. She did not know that somewhere above her, alien beings were preparing to take her away from everything she loved. Morning came slowly to New Eden. The local sun was smaller and redder than Earth's sun, so dawn lasted nearly an hour. The sky turned from black to purple to orange as the colonists woke and prepared for another day of building their new home. Lily woke early. She often did. The gravity on 442b was slightly lower than Earth gravity, and she had been born here, so she always felt light and full of energy. Her parents were still asleep when she slipped out of bed and got dressed. She wanted to visit the eastern greenhouse. There was a man there who sometimes taught her things about plants. His name was Jake Mercer. He was not a teacher by profession. He was listed as a security consultant in the colony records, whatever that meant. But he knew a lot about plants and animals and survival, and he never talked down to her like she was stupid just because she was 7. Lily liked Jake. He was quiet and calm, and he always listened when she talked. Some of the other colonists seemed nervous around him, though she did not understand why. He was always nice to her. She found him near the greenhouse entrance, examining a row of tomato plants. He was a medium-sized man with short gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from wood. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they noticed everything. He saw Lily approaching before she was halfway across the field. "You are up early," he said. "I wanted to see the butterflies again," Lily told him. Jake nodded slowly. They should be active soon. The artificial sun lamps just came on. They walked into the greenhouse together. The air inside was warm and wet and smelled like growing things. Rows of plants stretched out in every direction, filling the space with green life. Above them, mechanical butterflies drifted from flower to flower, doing their programmed work. Lily watched them with wonder. Jake watched Lily with something that might have been fondness, though his expression never changed much. "Can you teach me about the new plants?" Lily asked. "The ones near the back wall." "Those are medicinal herbs," Jake said. "Come on, I will show you which ones are safe to touch." They walked deeper into the greenhouse. Jake explained things in simple terms that Lily could understand. He told her which plants could heal wounds and which could cure headaches, and which ones were poisonous if eaten raw but helpful if prepared correctly. Lily listened carefully and tried to remember everything. Neither of them noticed the shadow that passed over the greenhouse roof. Neither of them heard the distant sound of atmospheric entry. They descended on the far side of the colony, hidden by buildings and morning mist. Jake stopped talking in the middle of a sentence. His head turned slightly and his eyes narrowed. He had heard something or sensed something that Lily could not detect. "What is wrong?" she asked. Jake did not answer immediately. He stood very still, listening to sounds beyond human hearing, feeling vibrations in the air that came from years of surviving in dangerous places. His instincts were screaming at him. Something was coming, something bad. "Stay close to me," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made Lily's skin prickle. "No matter what happens, you stay right beside me. Do you understand?" Lily nodded. She did not understand, but she trusted him. Outside the greenhouse, the warriors were already moving through New Eden. They had disabled the colony's communication tower with a single precision strike. They had jammed all emergency frequencies. They were hunting for a 7-year-old girl, and they expected no resistance. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the eastern greenhouse. They had no idea what a human would do to protect a child. They were about to learn. Jake Mercer had not always been the quiet man who tended plants on a distant colony world. Once, he had been something else entirely. Something that governments pointed at problems they needed to disappear. Something that enemies feared and allies never fully trusted. He was born in a small town in Montana on Earth 53 years ago. His father was a mechanic. His mother was a nurse. They raised him to be honest, to work hard, and to protect those who could not protect themselves. They did not live to see what their son would become. The resource wars of the 2140s changed everything. Water became scarce in parts of the world. Fertile land became precious. Nations that had been peaceful for generations suddenly remembered old hatreds. Young men like Jake were called to serve, and many of them never came home. Jake survived. That was his gift, if you could call it a gift. No matter how bad things got, no matter how impossible the situation, Jake Mercer kept breathing when others stopped. He fought in jungles and deserts and frozen wastelands. He saw friends die beside him. He did things that still visited him in nightmares. His unit gave him a nickname during the worst of the fighting. They called him Honey Badger. On Earth, the honey badger was a small animal known for one thing above all else. It did not give up. It did not back down. It would fight creatures 10 times its size and win through pure stubborn refusal to accept defeat. When a honey badger decided something was worth fighting for, it fought until the end, no matter the cost. Jake was like that. His commanders learned they could send him into situations where success seemed impossible, and somehow he would come back alive with the mission completed. He never bragged about it. He never seemed proud of it. He just did what needed to be done and then went quiet again. The wars ended eventually. They always do. But Jake could not go back to being a normal person. He had seen too much. He knew too much about what lived inside human beings, both the darkness and the light. He drifted for a while, taking security jobs that kept him moving, never staying anywhere long enough to form attachments. Then the colony ships started leaving Earth. Jake signed up for a frontier assignment without really knowing why. Maybe he wanted to escape the planet where he had done so many terrible things. Maybe he hoped that a new world would give him a chance to become someone different. Or maybe he was just tired and wanted to go somewhere quiet. New Eden accepted him because frontier colonies needed people with survival skills. They listed him as a security consultant, which meant he helped train the colony militia and advised on defensive planning. It was easy work. The colony had no real enemies. The biggest threats were local wildlife and occasional equipment failures. For the first time in decades, Jake began to relax. He discovered he liked gardening. He found peace in watching things grow instead of watching things die. He kept to himself mostly, but he was always willing to help when someone needed it. The colonists thought he was strange but harmless. They had no idea about his past. Then he met Lily Carter. She was 6 years old when they first talked. She had wandered into the greenhouse where Jake was working, curious about the plants and unafraid of the quiet man who tended them. Most children sensed something dangerous in Jake and kept their distance. Lily did not. She asked him questions about the flowers. She told him about her school and her friends and her dreams of becoming a scientist someday. She talked, and Jake listened, and something that had been frozen inside him for a very long time began to thaw. He started teaching her, small things at first, how to identify plants by their leaves, how to tell if water was safe to drink, how to read animal tracks and weather patterns. Lily absorbed everything like a sponge, eager to learn, always asking for more. Her parents noticed the friendship and were grateful. Jake never asked for anything in return. He never tried to take the place of her father. He was just there, steady and patient, a quiet presence in her young life. Jake told himself he was just being kind to a lonely child. He told himself he was not getting attached. He was lying to himself, and somewhere deep down he knew it. The morning that came, Jake was showing Lily how to identify edible roots. He heard the sonic boom of atmospheric entry before anyone else in the colony. His body recognized the sound instantly. It was the sound of something heavy falling from the sky at high speed. It was the sound of an attack. His training took over without conscious thought. He calculated distances and angles. He mapped escape routes in his head. He identified cover positions and choke points. All of this happened in the span of a single heartbeat while his face remained perfectly calm. Then he looked at Lily, and his calculations changed. If he was alone, he would have several options. He could hide or run or fight depending on the situation. But he was not alone. He had a 7-year-old girl standing beside him, looking up at him with complete trust in her eyes. She was counting on him to keep her safe. Something shifted inside Jake Mercer, something old and dangerous that he had tried to bury for years. He felt it rising up through his chest like cold fire, burning away doubt and fear and hesitation. He knew what was coming. He did not know who or why, but he knew that someone was coming for this colony. Someone was coming for these people. And they would have to go through him first. "Stay close to me," he said to Lily. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was iron underneath it. "No matter what happens, you stay right beside me. Do you understand?" Lily nodded. She could feel that something was wrong, but she was not afraid. Jake was there. Jake would protect her. She believed this with the simple faith of a child who has never been let down by the people she trusts. Jake took her hand and led her toward the greenhouse exit. He moved carefully, keeping to the shadows, watching every direction at once. His other hand found the harvesting blade on his belt. It was just a tool for cutting thick plant stems, but in his hands it could be a weapon. He could hear sounds now, Unfamiliar sounds, heavy footsteps that did not match human weight, the hum of technology he did not recognize, the sharp commands of a language he had never heard before. Aliens, they were being attacked by aliens. Jake felt no surprise. He felt no fear. He felt only a cold, clear focus that he remembered from the worst days of the wars. His mind emptied of everything except the immediate present. He became aware of every shadow, every sound, every movement of air. The honey badger was awake. And somewhere out there, beings who had never met a human like him were about to learn why some prey should never be hunted. The squad leader was named. He had served the Dominion for 40 years and participated in the conquest of 12 species. He knew how to break the will of primitive civilizations. He knew how to make them kneel. His squad consisted of 12 warriors in powered exoskeletons. The armor made them 8 feet tall and strong enough to tear through walls. Their weapons could level buildings. Their sensors could track targets through smoke, darkness, and solid matter. By every measure of military strength, they were unstoppable. They had landed at the edge of the colony and moved inward, searching for the child listed in their target file. They had already passed through several structures without finding her. The humans inside had screamed and fled, exactly as expected. One male had tried to fight them with a simple projectile weapon, had killed him with a single shot. The others learned quickly to stay out of the way. Now they were approaching the eastern greenhouse. Their sensors indicated 2 life signs inside, one adult and one child. The size signatures matched their target profile. Signaled his warriors to fan out and surround the structure. They moved with practiced precision, covering all exits. There would be no escape. The greenhouse doors slid open. A human male stepped out into the morning light. He was average in size, neither tall nor short. His hair was gray. His face showed no expression. His hands hung loose at his sides, one of them holding a simple blade meant for cutting plants. Behind him, partially hidden by his body, was the child they had come for. Studied the human through his helmet sensors. The readings were strange. The human's heart rate was unusually slow. His body temperature was slightly below normal. His brain activity showed patterns that had never seen before in a threatened creature. Most prey animals showed fear responses when confronted by warriors. This human showed nothing. "You will surrender the offspring," announced through his translation device. "Resistance is statistically inadvisable. Compliance will ensure minimal harm to your settlement." The human did not move. He did not speak. He simply stood there, watching them with eyes the color of storm clouds. Those eyes moved slowly across the squad, noting positions, measuring distances, calculating angles. Had seen that kind of look before, but only in professional soldiers, never in a simple colonist. "You do not understand your situation," continued. "We are 12. You are 1. Our weapons can destroy you before you complete a single step. Surrender the child and you may live." Still the human said nothing. His silence was beginning to disturb in ways he could not explain. One of the younger warriors grew impatient. His name was, and he had never learned proper caution. He stepped forward, reaching toward the child with one armored hand. "Enough of this," said. "I will take the offspring myself." What happened next would be studied by military analysts for decades. The human moved. That was the only way could describe it later. One moment he was standing still. The next moment he was somewhere else entirely and was falling to the ground with his exoskeleton's neck joint severed cleanly. The human had not attacked the armor itself. He had found the tiny gap between helmet and chest plate, the hairline crack that allowed the neck to turn, and he had driven his harvesting blade through it with surgical precision. Was dead before he hit the ground. The other warriors opened fire. Their weapons tore through the air where the human had been standing, but he was no longer there. He had rolled sideways, using his falling body as cover, and now he was among them like a wolf among sheep. watched in disbelief as the human dismantled his squad with nothing but a farming tool and his bare hands. The human knew exactly where to strike. He knew every weakness in their armor, every blind spot in their sensors, every vulnerability that himself had never considered. He moved like water, flowing around attacks, redirecting force, turning the warriors' strength against them. Two more warriors fell in as many seconds. Their suits were not designed for close combat against opponents who moved like this. Their weapons were meant for ranged engagement, not knife fighting. Every advantage they held became meaningless when the human was too close to target, too fast to track, too unpredictable to anticipate. A warrior named managed to grab the human's arm, was the strongest in the squad, capable of bending steel with his powered gauntlets. But the human did something with his body, some kind of twist that could not follow, and suddenly the grip was broken, and his knee joint was destroyed, and he was screaming on the ground. Through it all, the child remained exactly where the human had left her. She had pressed herself against the greenhouse wall, her eyes wide, watching something she did not fully understand. She was afraid, yes, but not of the man who was protecting her. She was afraid for him. She was afraid he would get hurt fighting these monsters. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. When it ended, 4 warriors lay dead or disabled on the red soil of New Eden. The remaining 8 had pulled back, forming a defensive circle, their weapons trained on a single human male who stood in the center of the carnage without a scratch on him. Jake Mercer was breathing slightly harder than normal. His harvesting blade was covered in alien blood that glowed faintly purple in the morning light. His expression had not changed from the calm mask he had worn throughout the fight. Felt something he had not experienced in 40 years of military service. He felt fear, real, animal fear of the creature standing before him. "What are you?" he demanded. Jake did not answer the question. Instead, he spoke for the first time since the confrontation began. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. "You came here to take a child," he said. "You came to my world to steal a little girl from her family. That was a mistake." He took a step forward. 8 warriors flinched back. "Leave now," Jake continued. "Take your dead and leave. Tell your commanders what happened here. Tell them what you found. And tell them this: if anyone comes back for her or for any child on this colony, I will find them. I will hunt them across every star in this galaxy, and I will end them." Wanted to attack. Every instinct told him to destroy this creature and complete his mission. But he looked at his fallen warriors. He looked at the blood-covered blade in the human's hand. He looked into those storm cloud eyes that held no fear, no mercy, no hesitation. He gave the order to retreat. The surviving gathered their wounded and their dead, and to there. They launched into orbit without the target they had come for, broadcasting emergency signals to their command ship. Jake watched them go. Only when there was a distant speck in the sky did he let out a long breath and turn to Lily. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Good," he said, kneeling down to her level. "Let us get you home." He took her hand, and together they walked back toward the colony. Behind them, purple blood was already drying in the alien sun. The easy claim had just become very complicated. Commander listened to his report in complete silence. His face showed no emotion, but inside he was burning with a mixture of shame and fury. 4 warriors dead, 8 wounded, 0 objectives achieved, all because of a single human with a farming tool. It was impossible. It everything the Dominion knew about inferior species. Humans were supposed to be weak, soft, frightened creatures who surrendered at the first sign of superior force. They were not supposed to fight back. They were certainly not supposed to win. Made his decision quickly. He would not return to the Dominion with a report of failure. He would not explain to his superiors that a primitive colonist had defeated an elite squad. He would crush this colony completely, take the child by force, and make an example that would prevent any future resistance. He called for reinforcements. 3 cruisers dropped out of faster-than-light travel within hours. Each cruiser carried 200 warriors in full combat configuration. Each possessed enough firepower to reduce New Eden to a smoking crater, assembled his forces in orbit, and prepared for total war. What he did not know was that the colonists were preparing too. Word had spread through New Eden within minutes of the first attack. People who had been simple farmers and engineers and teachers that morning were now something else. They were defenders. They had built this colony with their own hands, raised their children in its red soil, buried their dreams in its fields. They would not surrender it to alien invaders. Jake Mercer walked through the colony, speaking to people in small groups. He did not give speeches or make grand promises. He simply explained what was coming and asked if they were willing to fight. Every single person said yes. They had no military weapons. The colony had never expected to face a war, but humans were creative in ways that could not imagine. Mining charges became explosives. Agricultural machinery became armored vehicles. Survey drones became scout platforms. Every tool and device was examined for combat potential. The colonists dug trenches and built barricades. They mapped the terrain and identified defensive positions. They created fallback points and supply caches. Jake directed it all with the quiet efficiency of a man who had done this many times before. Daniel Carter found Jake near the central square, reviewing a map of the colony's layout. Lily's father looked tired and scared, but there was determination in his eyes. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for saving her. I do not know how to repay you." Jake looked up from his map. "Help me keep everyone alive. That is payment enough." "Is it true what the survivors of that squad said, that you killed 4 of them by yourself?" "They came to take a child," Jake said simply. "I stopped them." Daniel shook his head in amazement. "Who are you, really? I mean, your file says security consultant, but nobody who tends greenhouses fights like that." Jake was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant. "I am someone who has done terrible things for causes I believed in. I came here hoping to leave all that behind. But some skills do not go away just because you want them to." He met Daniel's eyes. "I will not let them hurt your daughter. I will not let them hurt any of our people. Whatever I have to do, whatever it costs, I will keep them safe." Daniel believed him. They landed at dusk. 600 warriors poured out of at multiple points around the colony. They expected to face a terrified population, easy to round up, easy to control. They had adjusted their tactics based on report, staying in large groups, maintaining distance, trusting in numbers and firepower. It did not help. The humans fought from buildings and rooftops. They fought from tunnels that had been dug for water pipes. They fought from positions that made no tactical sense, attacking from impossible angles, retreating only to appear somewhere else. Every meter of ground cost the blood. Jake had organized the defense into small, independent teams. Each team knew the terrain better than the invaders. Each team could melt away into the colony's maze of structures and emerge somewhere unexpected. They found themselves hunting shadows. Worse, the humans did not fight fair. They collapsed buildings onto advancing squads. They flooded tunnels with irrigation water. They rigged farming equipment to explode when sensors detected the specific energy signature of power armor. Every advantage the invaders possessed was countered by human ingenuity and desperation. Through it all, Jake moved like a ghost. He appeared wherever the fighting was worst, turning retreats into counterattacks, rallying defenders who were ready to break. His presence alone seemed to strengthen the colonists. If the honey badger was still fighting, they could keep fighting too. The night dragged on in fire and blood. Warriors fell by the dozen. Their commanders screamed orders that accomplished nothing. Their superior technology failed again and again against opponents who refused to behave according to any known tactical doctrine. Commander watched from orbit as his invasion collapsed. His forces had been trained to crush resistance quickly and move on. They had no experience with an enemy that kept fighting despite impossible odds. They had no protocols for dealing with humans. By dawn, two of his cruisers were burning wreckage on the colony's outskirts, brought down by a coordinated attack using modified mining lasers. His ground forces had suffered 60% casualties. The colonists had lost people too, but they had not broken. If anything, each loss seemed to make them fight harder. Finally understood what he was facing. These humans did not calculate victory and defeat the way rational species did. They did not weigh costs and benefits and choose the logical path. When their children were threatened, when their homes were attacked, they became something else entirely, something that would rather die than surrender. He had made a terrible mistake. His easy claim had become a galactic blunder. The remaining forces began to pull back toward their surviving cruiser. They had come expecting conquest. They left with barely a third of their original number. Behind them, the colonists of New Eden stood exhausted but unbroken in the light of their alien sun. Jake Mercer watched the last disappear into the sky. He was covered in dust and blood, some of it his own. His body ached from wounds he had not allowed himself to feel during the fighting. But he was still standing. The colony was still standing. Lily came running toward him from the shelter where children had been hidden during the battle. She threw her arms around his waist and held on tight. "You saved us," she whispered. Jake put one hand on her head, gentle despite everything he had done in the past 16 hours. "We saved each other," he said. In orbit, Commander was transmitting a surrender request. He had no choice left. His mission had failed completely, and the beings who had defeated him would demand answers. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was capable of. The news of the Battle of New Eden spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. Within days, every species with access to interstellar communications had heard some version of the story. A small human colony had defeated a full invasion force. A single human male had killed elite warriors with nothing but a farming blade. The mighty Dominion had been humiliated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session to address what had happened. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the Great Hall of the Assembly Station, all of them demanding answers. How had this happened? What did it mean for galactic security? What should be done about the humans? Commander was brought before the Assembly in restraints. He had surrendered unconditionally to the colonists of New Eden, and they had turned him over to galactic authorities. His career was finished. His reputation was destroyed. He would spend the rest of his life as an example of what happened when you underestimated the wrong species. The Assembly examined all available evidence. They reviewed sensor logs from the armor. They studied tactical recordings from the cruisers. They analyzed every piece of data that could explain the impossible outcome. What they found disturbed them deeply. The humans had not won through superior technology. Their weapons were crude by galactic standards. Their defenses were improvised from civilian equipment. They possessed no special genetic advantages, no hidden biological weapons, no secret military installations. They had won because they simply refused to lose. The Assembly's military analysts wrote a detailed report on the battle. They identified several factors that had contributed to the human victory. First, the humans displayed an unusual ability to adapt and improvise under pressure. Where other species followed established protocols, humans invented new solutions on the spot. Second, humans showed a remarkable tolerance for physical damage. They continued fighting with wounds that would have incapacitated members of other species. Third, and most importantly, humans exhibited what the report called protective rage response when their offspring were threatened. This last point received particular attention. The analysts had reviewed the helmet recordings from Squad and identified the exact moment when the human-designated Jake Mercer had transformed from a passive observer to an efficient killing machine. It happened when one of the warriors reached for the child. In that instant, every measurable parameter of the human's physiology changed. His heart rate dropped. His brain activity shifted to patterns associated with predatory focus. His body released chemical compounds that suppressed pain response and enhanced physical performance. The human had not become angry. He had become something far more dangerous. He had become absolutely certain of what he needed to do and absolutely committed to doing it regardless of cost. The assembly added a warning flag to the Galactic Species database. The entry for humans was updated with several new annotations. Humans do not respond to threat displays in predictable ways. Standard intimidation protocols are ineffective and may provoke escalation. When human offspring are endangered, adult humans exhibit behavior patterns consistent with apex predators rather than rational actors. Engagement with humans defending children is not recommended under any circumstances. A separate annotation, written by an analyst who had watched the helmet recordings multiple times, was more direct. The human they call Honey Badger defeated 4 elite warriors while armed with a tool designed for cutting plants. Do not engage humans who are protecting children. Do not engage humans at all if it can be avoided. They do not know when they are supposed to lose. The Dominion officially apologized to the human government for the attack on New Eden. They paid reparations. They agreed to never again attempt acquisition operations against human colonies. It was a humiliating surrender from a species that had never surrendered before. Other species took notice. The humans were new to the galactic community, but they had just announced their presence in a way that could not be ignored. They were not the soft, primitive creatures that everyone had assumed. They were something else entirely, something that even the mightiest powers in the galaxy would think twice before provoking. On 442b, life slowly returned to normal. The colonists buried their dead with honor and began rebuilding what had been destroyed. They expanded their defenses, accepted military support from Earth, and established permanent observation posts in orbit. New Eden would never be caught off guard again. Jake Mercer did not attend the memorial services or the victory celebrations. He was not interested in being called a hero. He went back to the eastern greenhouse, back to his plants, back to the quiet routine that he had built for himself before everything changed. But he was different now. Everyone could see it. The careful distance he had maintained from the other colonists had disappeared. He ate meals with families who invited him. He helped with rebuilding projects without being asked. He laughed sometimes, though the sound was rusty from disuse. Most importantly, he spent time with Lily Carter every day. He continued teaching her about plants and survival, but now he also taught her other things. How to read people, how to stay calm under pressure, how to find strength when everything seemed hopeless. He was preparing her for a galaxy that was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Lily's parents did not object. They understood that Jake had given their daughter something precious. Not just her life, but a protector who would always be there when she needed him. A guardian who would fight impossible odds to keep her safe. Years passed. Lily grew up. She became the scientist she had dreamed of being, studying alien ecosystems and developing new agricultural techniques. She never forgot the man who had stood between her and monsters when she was 7 years old. Jake grew older too. His hair turned completely white. His movements became slower, but his eyes never changed. They still watched everything, still noticed everything, still held that cold calm that had terrified warriors. Sometimes, late at night, he would stand at the colony's perimeter and look up at the stars. He would remember the battle, the blood, the terrible clarity of knowing exactly what he was capable of. He would feel the weight of what he had done and what he would do again if necessary. The galaxy had learned its lesson about humanity. They had learned that humans would fight impossible odds for the things they loved. They had learned that humans possessed individuals like Jake Mercer, protectors who would walk through fire to keep a child safe. Most importantly, they had learned that what looked like an easy claim could become a galactic blunder when a honey badger stood beside a child. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other species were updating their own records, making their own notes, spreading their own warnings. Do not threaten human children. Do not underestimate human protectors. Do not make the same mistake they made. The humans were watching. The humans were waiting. And if anyone came for their children again, the humans would be ready. They always were.